Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. So how big and how fast of an SSD drive do you actually need for video editing? Well, some would say the faster the better, but that's not entirely true, okay? It kind of all depends on the computer you're doing things on. It depends on the file systems you're working with, like 720, 1080, 4K, 6K, 8K footage, whether you're using single files or multiple files within a video, right? And so you've got a couple choices. You can go toward the more cheaper side of the fence if you're doing just single files, like the majority of what I do, for example. Whether I do 1080p or I do 4K, I'm working with a single file. So I'm cutting this video, it's one file. There's a moment of silence before I start talking, and then there's the see you later or whatever I say at the end of my video. I just nip those two parts out and then I put in my intro and outro. So it's very quick, dirty, basic editing. In which case for that, I can just use my internal drive on my Mac, okay, or on my PC, all right? Or if I really wanted to, in a pinch, because that's what I bought the thing for, I can do this on my MacBook Air and not run out of RAM either on my MacBook Air, because let's face it, it is a base model. 8 gigs of RAM and 256 is just not going to cut it for even 6 months for most people, okay? That's why we've seen thousands of these base model configuration Macs up for sale rather quickly, because people found out that, well, they were kind of misled, all right, on what's good and what's not good when it comes to base model Macs with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gig hard drives, right? Now, of course, we do have restrictions with M1 computers on the first release versions, which covers our Air, our MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, the Mini, and of course the iMac. These machines are all maxed out at 16 gigs of RAM is the most you can do, and the highest internal drive you can have put in by Apple is 2 terabyte, okay? Now the drives are fast. You know, these things are running out at over 2,900 megabits per second. They are screaming freaking fast. And if you get a decent sized enough internal drive, and you're not a program hog, okay, then there is no reason why you even need an external drive at all. Not now, not 5 years from now, not 6 years from now. But, there's a big but here, okay? If you have future plans of perhaps dabbling into the more higher end programs above iMovie, like DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut, maybe you're going to use those right away anyways, okay, which is fine. The programs in themselves don't use a whole ton of hard drive space. What's using your hard drive space, of course, are things like your games, your operating system, files that you would save to your computer, right? Well, you don't save stuff to your computer. That's a rookie mistake. I learned that the hard way once myself and didn't back stuff up. So what I do is I've got my Mac Mini, which is my main machine now. I barely even turn on my PC anymore. I'm actually thinking about selling it. But even though it is my gaming system, I'm not using it. Why bother? But with my Mac Mini, I got it with 16 gigs of RAM and a half a terabyte of hard drive space. Now, whether you've gone after 8-core CPU and 7-core GPU or the 8x8 configuration makes no difference. One extra GPU core is not going to break the bank, if you know what I mean, as far as you're not going to really see much of a performance loss when you're talking about working with cut and dirty files, okay? But the hard drives internally, I went with a half a terabyte. Now, I moved a whack load of programs to external, just regular everyday SSD drives, okay? And one NVMe drive that happens to be sitting inside my dock, but I'm not even getting the speed out of that NVMe, even though it's rated for 3,300 read and 3,000 write. Now, I'll get the speed out of that, really close to that at least, if I throw it internally in my PC on the motherboard where it came from. But in the dock on a Type-C bus, or on a Type-C bus, the most you can expect out of even something that fast would be about 690s to maybe 700 read, and in the 600s on the right side. Now, you guys will remember I recently also spent $160 on an external Type-C only 1 terabyte SSD that's rated for, I think it was either 11 or 1500 megabits per second. I'd have to check my video on that. But that drive is doing almost the exact same speeds as my 33 by 3000. So what this is telling us here is no matter how fast of an SSD drive you buy that's a Type-C porting to plug into the back of your Mac, you're not going to gain any real speed out of that thing. You're not even going to see the speeds that it could go, right? These NVMe drives will not light up and go, yeah, in a Type-C situation. Now, put the same drives into a Thunderbolt case that has a controller inside that can push those speed barriers, then you can get a lot closer to the rated speed of the drive. Even if the controller is designed to handle, 5,000 megabits per second, but your drive is only 3,000, well, you're probably going to see somewhere around 2,000 to 2,400 megabits per second. And that would be about it, okay? And the reason for this is because they are up to ratings. And of course, we have the thing of powered versus non-powered. Now, if you're the kind of person that is just doing quick and dirty basic editing, that's all you're ever going to do, then yeah, I would definitely say you're fine with the internal drive as long as you can keep the space there. But you're going to need at least a half to a 1 terabyte hard drive, and you're going to need an external SSD of some sort just to keep your files backed up, or even an HDD. I actually have a 4 terabyte HDD by Seagate that I bought so I could back up all my PC and all my Mac files into one location there, and then I have redundant backups spread across other drives. This way, if something does go wrong with the HDD, I do have other backup sources so that I don't lose anything, because I'm not burning stuff to CD anymore. Even though I do have a burner on my computer, I use it for, taking music CDs and, converting all my music CDs to MP3s, make up my own CDs for the car, that sort of thing, right? So that's only real use. Other than any programs I might have on CD, then I'll use the CD burner for that, to install them, right? And there's not a whole lot out there that even works on an M1 anyways anymore, at least not for older stuff, so, hey, we have limitations on what we can do anymore with a CD player. They're becoming obsolete, right? Anyhow, so if you do have the future plans of going into higher level, I would probably spend your money more on your internal storage because it's going to be faster, it's going to be more reliable, and it's not going to thermal on you either. That's another problem I found with external non-powered drives, is that they thermal a lot because they're being starved for amperage. Now, voltage is always going to be the same. All SSD drives, all SATA style stick drives, all NVMe stick drives, they all require 5 volts, but it's the amperage. NVMe and SATA sticks require 2 amps or higher. You don't have that coming out of the port on your Mac. Out of the Thunderbolt port, you have 900. Out of an average Type A port, you have 500 to 900, depending on what version of Type A port that is. So that's not a lot of milliamps to run a drive. Though your drive will run, your system profiler, of course, is going to say, well, it's using 896 out of the 900, or it's using 500 out of 500 type of thing, right? But the device wants more when you start looking at these kind of things. But wait, there's more. Standard SSD platformed drives that look like laptop drives also chew up 1 amp or higher. I have a 1.6 amp draw Western Digital 500 gig SSD that's brand new that's sitting inside my PC laptop. Now, inside the laptop, it's able to get that 1.6 amps. It runs cool as can be, no hassles whatsoever. When I try to mount that same drive on my Mac, for example, in a case, if it does mount, it won't stay there for long. It'll cut in and out, right? Because I am like way far off on any kind of amperage to really run that drive properly. Now, with a 1 amp drive that I have sitting in my dock, it's getting that 1 amp to it, so it is stable, it doesn't thermal on me, and I'm not losing speed, right? So, whereas when we did get the 1.6 amp draw drive up and running on the Mac, in that video, we had noticed not only would it kick out, but it would also thermal to the point where not only did the drive get really hot, but also we saw that our initial read and write speed seemed okay at first, but in the next round of testing, we noticed that the write speed was dropping right down to like pathetic, like under 10 megabits per second, because the drive is trying to pull what it can't have. Now that can actually damage your drive, but it could also damage your bus. This is also why we've talked about many times on the channel about if you're going to get a hub for your Mac, make sure it's one that can accept power or give power from an outside source to that hub to make it a powered hub, right? And don't rely on Quizlab's cable or any of these, what looks like a little Mac Mini kind of computer, but it's actually a hub. Don't rely on any of those hubs to use their cables to provide power from your Mac to the hub, other than the main cable is just a connection point. It's not powering the hub, okay, other than it is giving it, 900 milliamps out of that Thunderbolt port, but you need to power your other devices, and that's where a powered hub system will have another port on it to input power. They say in the Quizlab one to actually use the Type A to, Type C to Type A cable to go to your Type A port to get power from that to power the hub. Well, that 900 milliamps is not enough. It's not going to run all your stuff, including the internal drives. So you need an outside power source. I'm barely getting away with a 3 amp external power supply. I actually need 5 amps in order to get everything normal, but it is actually pretty stable with my drives. Now I'm not going to see much of an increase on my drive speeds, even with giving them a little bit more amperage, because that NVMe in there wants a lot of amperage, which it's getting at least 1 amp, maybe a little bit more, but it's still not getting enough, okay? So, but at least it's not thermaling on me, and I'm doing it under light loads, and that's the big thing. Light loads, it's going to stay running cool, and it's going to stay stable. And I've run enough testing on it that we know we're getting enough power to keep it stable for multiple, stress tests on it, so it can handle the 5 gigabyte stress test loads without thermaling on us. So that's actually a good thing. So if you're going to go multi-files for 1080 or 4K or 6 or 8K, well, you're going to need a really fast drive. Either go with the biggest internal you can get and keep enough space free on it so you can use it, or go to an external SSD. Now for that, you would want to get yourself into basically the topper end, or one of the top ends at least, of external Thunderbolt drives that are powered cases that can also provide the speed of like even 5,000 megabits per second. And then you drop in an NVMe drive into that. It takes you about 2 minutes to do this. It's called a do-it-yourselfer. It actually saves you money in the long haul because you get to pick and choose whatever drives you want. If you burn a drive out because it dies, then you can just remove it and put a new one in and away you go, kind of thing, right? But these specific cases are made for high performance jobs like video editing, right? So they're going to cost you. Now I priced out a Thunderbolt case for myself because down the road I do want to get into more intense video editing, right? And because of that, I want to try and future-proof myself a little bit, but at the same time I also want to wait until I'm almost ready for that. And I'm looking at about $385 currently, as of about 3 months ago, for just the case alone. And then at least another $500-600 for the drive that I want to work with that case, as well as for the storage capacity of that drive. Because when you start working in these massive files that are like 2K, 4K and above footage, and you're working with multiple files, you're going to need a lot of drive space for color correction, for rendering, for all of that stuff, doing your main export, all of it, right? So that's going to chew up some space, obviously. So I need something around about a 4 terabyte drive that can run out between 5,000 to 7,000 megabits per second to have as little dropped frames as possible, okay? We're still, I don't believe, up to enough snuff of technology yet to go 100% guaranteed no drop frames, okay? So with keeping that in mind as well, I mean, that dropped frame stuff is not just part of the hard drive being an issue of not being able to keep up. It's the bus lines, it's the processor, it's the RAM in your computer, and so on. And if you're a real serious raunchy video editor, you shouldn't be anywhere near these regular everyday M1s. You should be looking more at the Pro or the Max series M1 systems, okay? And Apple's about to unleash a whole new Mac Pro tower that I saw some of the, I guess you'd call them spoilers on it. They've now combined like 4 processors together. It's like, wow. And I don't know. We'll see what happens at the show when they tell us about the actual stuff. But this is all those, leaked videos and stuff, so who knows what Apple's done. But apparently what they've done is supposed to be able to smoke pretty much everything now. And Apple's still not done, and this is just an M1 series. We still have like M2s and M3s in the basket yet, and more horsepower coming. So it should be interesting. Anyways, so with that being said, these are probably not a very good choice, okay? Except for maybe 1080p and 720p. This kind of a system with a SATA or an NVMe in it, you're running around 700 megabits per second is what you're going to expect. That should be more than enough to do 1080p and 720. It'll do basic 4K stuff. It could probably even get you, without any problems, some basic, even 6 or 8K, because you're keeping things basic. It's when you get really super complex with your video editing, this is where you're going to need a lot more than just something simple like this. Now, to be quite honest, this type of drive system where it uses the laptop-sized SSDs, I wouldn't even consider using these, period, because they're like maybe half the speed of even an NVMe or a stick-style SSD. Okay, NVMEs are stick-style as well. I just call them stick-style because it's just easier to comprehend for most people. But those kind of drives are a lot faster than this kind. Even coming off of the same Type A bus line, they are much quicker. These ones. So this would be something that I would probably say, yeah, I would, if you're going to be just a basic person, you don't have to invest a lot of money. I think I paid about $10 for the case. The drive, I actually scavenged that out of an HP laptop, but even the drive, you can buy it cheap. Even a half a terabyte drive is more than sufficient for 2K, 4K footage. It's sufficient for 720, 1080p when you're working with single files, maybe even some double files. But you got to really watch how far you push things, because then this becomes too slow to keep up. Okay, and that's a problem you run into. But also keep in mind too, you will thermal this drive when you run it too hard. Because with this style of a drive system that's in here, these chew up a lot of amperage that you don't have. And this is where I think a lot of people have made a huge error, even with Thunderbolt drives. The drives are thermaling on them, and they're slowing down. So even when they're scrubbing through their footage, they're seeing drop frames and stuff happening, right? Well, that's because of the drive is not a powered drive. So it's not getting enough amperage to run the drive even at proper speeds. Even if they speed test it and they see, oh, we're getting 2,000 megabits per second out of this Thunderbolt drive. Well, great, because it is Thunderbolt. It should have some speed, right? But even with the Thunderbolt drive, all that is a different controller than the controller that's in this. That's all it is, okay? Other than powered and non-powered versions of that same controller, right? So you stick in whatever drive you want inside that case, or if you bought a pre-made one from the factory by whoever, right? That NVMe that's sitting inside that Thunderbolt case is still chewing and wants to chew a lot of amperage, though it will fire up with less and it will run with less. It is going to thermal. It is going to drop your frames on you, and this is something that nobody seems to understand other than just a very few of us. Now, not every guy my age is an Apple certified tech like myself or PC certified tech, but they seem to know the same stuff I do. But then you have literally thousands of channels out there giving out information that they're missing the boat on these very important factors between powered and non-powered drive units, whether it's something, you know, affordable like this that you can put together or something like this. They're not clicking in. You know, they only have so much amperage. And not all powered hubs are going to supply you what you need either, because when you plug this into the front of a powered hub, you're only going to get, you know, 500 to 900 milliamps out of the Type A, depending on the Type A version. The Type C, you'll get your 900, and that's it. So you could stick a 300 amp power supply into that sucker to feed it everything it wants and then some. It's not increasing the power to those frontal ports or to those Type A or Type C ports, right? And even Thunderbolt has its limitations, which is what? It's 900 flippin' milliamps. That's all it's got. So if you want to have your drives run stabler and cooler, the trick is to use powered drives, not non-powered stuff, okay? Anyways, and that's going to give you top peak performance of your drives. They're going to run cooler. You're going to see either little to no dropped frames, depending, of course, on the horsepower of your computer to keep up with everything and how fast your drive is that you bought, etc., etc. These all have to go together, right? And it depends, too, on your program, right? And the amount of RAM in your computer, right? If you only have 8 gigs of RAM, you should expect to see dropped frames no matter how good everything else is, because when you're inside that program, the program to fire up doesn't use a lot of memory, but what's using it is all your files that are stuck in there that you're editing, your corrections, your change here, your changes there, your rendering, all of that is chewing up RAM that with 8 gigs of RAM, I'm sorry, you don't have that RAM. You're already into swap space, so you're thermaling the snot out of your internal SSD and burning it up because you didn't want to get a computer with 8 gigs of RAM or with 16 gigs or more RAM because you were told you didn't need more than 8 gigs anyways. So you were misinformed. Again, this is why we see thousands of these M1 systems readily available up for grabs on Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay, the Apple refurbished store as well. Okay? You're going to see piles of them because people were misled about what they actually needed under the hood. You know, I went with 16 gigs of RAM and a half a terabyte. I have absolutely zero issues. Okay? So, not a big deal for me. And I do play some games on my Mac, and I still don't run out of RAM with 16 gigs for the stuff I do. Now, when I want to get more intense into video editing and do some really crazy stuff, I have to upgrade my Mac because 16 gigs of RAM is not going to be enough, right? I'm definitely going to be looking into a Mac Studio, which I'm actually kind of looking into one right now. I just don't know how I'm going to get the money yet. But if I do, it'll be on the channel, don't worry. And I'm going to be like, yes! Anyways, so hopefully this video helped you guys out, gave you enough information to get you going on the right track. If you have any questions, just feel free, drop a line down below in the comments section, and we'll chit-chat about what you've got, what you need. Whatever your question is, I'll do the very best I can to answer it. So until next time, thanks so much for watching. Oh yeah, and don't forget to subscribe and smash the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one, alright? See ya!